The Fulani people of Nigeria make up about 7 to 10% of the Nigerian population, roughly 15 million people if the data is correct. This number is from a complete estimate based off on the 2006 census, which is the last census we've had, and combined with population growth projection. So at 15 million, this makes the Fulani one of the major tribes in Nigeria. The Fulani are believed to have originated in the Senegambia region, the modern-day Senegal and Gambia, around the Senegal River Valley, possibly as early as 4th or 5th centuries, Common Era. The evidence supporting this is based on linguistic and genetic studies. Right from the time they were specialized pastoralists heading cattle across the Sahel, this nomadic lifestyle shaped their early social organization and cultural identity through contact with Berber tribe and other North African groups. By the 11th to 13th centuries, they adopted Islam, likely through contact with Arab and Berber traders in the Sahel. These guys were trading gold, salt, and slaves. We've been conditioned to think about slave trade from the lens of transatlantic slavery, that it's only associated with the Europeans. We were not taught, or we do not think that having the discussion that some Africans also participated in slave trade and actually traded their fellow Africans, which is an important topic that we fail to teach ourselves. Okay, it's important to say that the Fulani didn't adopt Islam by jihad. It was actually a slow, peaceful means beginning in the 7th and completed by the 11th centuries, through contact with the Berber and Arab traders. Muslim scholars and missionaries played a crucial role in this by preaching and establishing Quranic schools, and because the Fulanis were pastoralists and herders, moving from place to place, this conversion process took longer than it would have. Early Fulani converts blended Islam with existing cultural practices, creating a mixed form of worship. By the 11th centuries, they began migrating eastwards across the Sahel, driven by trade opportunities, climate, and spirit of Islam. They moved through present-day Mali, Mauritania, and northern Nigeria, following the grazing route. By the 13th and 14th centuries, they reached northern Nigeria, particularly Hausa land, where they initially lived as nomadic herders or semi-sedentary communities. Some of them integrated into the Hausa society, adopting local indigenous languages and customs, while also maintaining their Fulfulde language and pastoral traditions. Recall, the Fulani originated as pastoralists in Senegambia region, relying on cattle herding, which required mobility across the Sahel for grazing. This nomadic lifestyle defined their identity, with cattle symbolizing wealth and status. But as they migrated eastwards across the Sahel, some began settling in urban centers or rural villages, particularly in Islamic states like Mali and the Songhai Empire. These sedentary ones were called the town Fulanis or Torodbe. Abandoning nomadic lifestyle, they engaged in trade, farming, or Islamic scholarship for intellectual opportunities. Between the 15th and 18th century, the sedentary lifestyle became more prominent, as more of them became scholars in Quranic schools and mosques. They participated in the trans-Saharan trade networks, trading salt, clothes, and kola nuts. And a lot of them became merchants or intermediaries. And most importantly, when they began jihad, there was need for members of the group to hold leadership roles in their conquered and newly formed Islamic caliphates. So they encouraged many nomadic Fulanis to settle and participate in the caliphate's economy and administration. The first jihad by the Fulani was in 1725 in Senegal. By the end of the 19th century, there were 3 subgroups of the Fulani: the nomadic Fulani, the sedentary Fulani, and the semi-nomadic groups. These groups combined seasonal herding with farming or trade. In 1725, Suleiman Bao, a Fulani scholar and reformer, led the first Fulani jihad, aka Futa Toro Jihad in Senegal. This jihad was a significant precursor that inspired other Fulani-led jihads in West Africa, including Usman Dan Fodio's Sokoto Jihad in 1804. I remember those days in primary school we were taught and read stories about Usman Dan Fodio. The text was framed as bravery in his part and celebrating his conquest. Looking back today, I'm like, why? Suleiman Bao's establishment of an Islamic state in Futa Toro, Senegal, provided a model of religious, political, and military leadership that influenced later Fulani movements. For context, a jihad would occur if a non-Fulani regime or even a Fulani regime is seen by Muslim clerics as not Islamic enough, or insufficiently Islamic, or corrupt. They therefore sought to reform religious practices and establish a better theocratic state based on, Sharia law. Usman Dan Fodio was born in 1754. This is 24 years after Suleiman Bao's success. Though there is no direct evidence that Usman Dan Fodio personally studied Suleiman Bao's work, his success in Futa Toro Jihad resonated through Islamic scholarly networks and Fulani oral traditions. Therefore, it's logical to assume that Usman was inspired by him, as both men were of the town Fulani or Torodi clerical class. The Sokoto Jihad began in 1804, led by Usman Dan Fodio, and led to the establishment of the Sokoto Caliphate. This became one of the largest caliphates or empires in West Africa. At its peak, the Sokoto Caliphate covered 1.5 million square kilometers, covering the entire northern Nigeria, parts of Niger, Cameroon, and Benin Republic, with a population of 10 to 20 million. The key Hausa states conquered includes Gobe, I don't know how to pronounce that, Kano, Katsina, Zaria, Bauchi, Gombe, Yola, and Ilorin. Each conquered state was replaced by a Fulani emirate, and the local rulers were, this was more than Islamic preaching. It was military conquest, land takeover, and permanent settlement. In other words, colonization. It is funny how when we think about colonization, we usually think about Europe and African colonization. We refuse to also have the discussion that some Africans also colonized their fellow Africans. Well, there you have it. As the jihad spread south, it ran into cultural, religious, and military resistance from tribes that are unwilling to accept Fulani domination. Ilorin was originally a Yoruba town under the Oyo Empire. Yes, the Oyo Empire is another significant empire to study if you want to understand the original political landscape of this geographical region before they formally created Nigeria and messed everything up. In sometime around the 1830s, the Sokoto Caliphate fought a holy war jihad and colonized Ilorin from the Oyo Empire. Before 1830, Ilorin was primarily a Yoruba population, but after the jihad, it lost its native population. Then Fulani and other ethnics settled. After the jihad, Ilorin became a Fulani stronghold within the Yoruba territory. The Oyo Empire, originally in control of that region, became weakened, and the displaced refugees began settling in other places and forming new city-states in Ibadan, Ijaye, Abeokuta, Modakeke, and Oke-Ogun town. These new city-states were more than refugee camps. They were deliberately built and militarized Yoruba stronghold to resist the spread and encroachment of Fulani Emirates into other Yoruba states and southern Nigeria. Their successful resistance, especially at Oshogbo, marked the southern limits of the Sokoto Caliphate's power. Now let's look at the Middle Belt nations. They are made up of multiple groups of ethnics, usually smaller than the Yorubas and far more smaller than the Sokoto Caliphate. So there's no way they can fight the Caliphate. Some of the ethnics were overrun, but many resisted fiercely, often using the guerrilla hit-and-run tactics and also using the harsh forest terrain and the centralized defense system to their advantage. The Middle Belt formed an effective buffer that prevented the Caliphate's southern dominance and protected the Igbos and other southern nations from jihad until 1903, when the British imperialism came and colonized the Sokoto Caliphate, and the colonizer eventually became the colonized. All thanks to Lord King Lugard. The impact of the Sokoto Caliphate's jihad and their military superiority over other Africans resonated well among the Fulani descendants and admired. The mindset lingered well beyond 1903 and arguably still echoes today. Many Nigerian historians and security analysts believe the jihad is alive today and has evolved into a modern form of slow, unspoken territorial expansion through settlements, violence, and government reluctance or complicity. Armed herders invade farming communities, kill civilians, and occupy lands. Displaced villagers don't return, and new settlements emerge, often Fulani. This has gone on for far too long. Many no longer believe it's just a traditional conflict. It resembles a creeping land grab. Attacks often go unpunished, victims are blamed for not accommodating nomads, and security forces arrive late or not at all. And weapon parity is heavily skewed. Herders often carry AK-47, while locals carry sticks and den guns. Now the big question and the elephant in the room is, where are the Fulani herders getting their AK-47s from?